Hi. So my question was about Vipassana. Um, so only recently I started to allow thoughts to come in to my practice. Um, Prior to that, I was nice and clear in my own little blissful land of happiness. And so my question is, when the thoughts come in, what do I do with them? So say I'm in, I presume that I'm supposed to be doing Vipassana during Hatha Yoga. That's probably question one. And when I'm doing Hatha Yoga, so say something comes up in my head. I don't know, I'll make something up. I had a row with my best friend. So do I think about the row? Do I think about, and if I'm thinking about the row and what's all said in it, do I then do pets to try and forget about what actually happened? Or I don't really know what to do. This is my problem. So just say, for example, what would you do in that case? I mean, and Carl, you said you dealt with anger and all sorts of things. How did you do it?
Oh, you became mute.
Sorry. My practice has been great for me because it has calmed me and it has made me much more stable in my relationships with other people because it has calmed me. But now I think I need more insight. So if you could help me, thank you.
Yeah, maybe I could start then. So first of all, if you should do Vipassana in Hatha Yoga practice, only if something comes up.
It's very hard to hear you, Carl.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll see. Just a second. Is it okay now? So I'd say that first and foremost in Hatha Yoga practice, it's about recognizing the basis of experience itself, of the knowing of phenomena. So that is why we use sentence, that's why we use pet. It's not to forget about whatever is going on at the moment, but it's just to get that basic recognition. So it has been used, the bundle. We want to get out of the identification with the bundle represents the karmic body. We want to get out of the identification with that to get the basic clarity so that we can actually study the bundle of karmic stuff, of reactions. So you said, should I practice pet to forget about the stuff? No, but you should practice pet to recognize the basic knowing first and foremost. And then once that is done, there are several different ways of approaching it. You could, if something comes up naturally on its own, you don't reject it, you don't try to stay with bliss or stay with a particular mind state, but you bring, well, you could say you bring that clarity of that basic state, basic knowing, and allow that karmic stuff to be included with that. So not pushing it away and not holding on to it either, but then using that clarity as an opportunity to actually see what's going on. If you've had a row with someone and there are strong emotional things taking place. Then after having established that basic recognition, using that to actually study, to actually feel into what's going on. You said also, should I start something along the line of, should I start thinking about, like actively bring up? That is an option. There have been some workshops. I think it was in the same, well, not the same series, but the same. So the bodhicitta videos that I mentioned, that has been mentioned here. So there's a series there also on basic awareness. So first going through the qualities, and then also including Vipashyana, or I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was something like awareness in movement or with movement. And well, if it wasn't that, then there are other workshops that deal with actually bringing up, for example, the internal voice. So after having established basic recognition, basic clarity, then you can actually, I remember once there was, this is an example, start listening to the voice, or actually, my memory is sort of failing me here, but I think it was along the line of actually allowing the inner voice of talking to yourself as it would from a samsaric perspective. So often like inner like criticism and stuff like that. And then bringing the clarity of the, or allowing that to be together with that clarity. So it's just an example of actively bringing up stuff. I've also practiced in the sense that, so again, after basic recognition, you can start thinking about something that is bothering you at the present moment. So in your example, roll with a best friend is a good one. And then allow that stuff to come up with in that basic clarity, or together with that basic clarity. But it's not that you always have to bring up stuff in Hatha Yoga practice. Usually, it can be used like that. It can be used like actively bringing up, but it's not a requirement for like every Hatha Yoga session. You have to deal with a particular problem. Sometimes it's just nice to sit with the recognition, and then if something comes up, because the purpose of particularly wrathful deities is that it does shake things up, so that things will come up, well, quite often, I would say, and then just feeling into that from the, just like with the two-part formula. In the two-part formula, we actively bring up, but always the clarity first. I don't know if that answers, or if any of the others have anything to add.
Thanks, Carl. Can you hear me properly? Can you hear me properly? Good. Yeah, what I can add to this is, Liz, we actually can experience thoughts in 3 different modes. The first mode is our usual mode. We are in the story of the thought. It's like we experience the meaning. We are in this scenario. We are like in that what we are thinking of. We take the thought as this story that goes on, and we are completely in it. And when we meditate like shamatha or this calming meditation, the thoughts begin to be spacious phenomena that just come and go. And we focus on the breath, or we focus on whatever, and they just start to calm down, this phenomena of thinking. It just gets down, as you know very well in your meditations, even to thoughtlessness. So there don't come any thoughts up again. This is much more pleasant, of course, because we are not dealing with the story or anything. And the third way is the way of Vipashyana. This is looking directly into what is this thought actually made of. Maybe you know these books that you can get at your eye doctors or where you get your glasses. They are 3D books. They are just dots and different colors on it, and then you take it to your head and make the book go backwards or in front of you, and suddenly you see an elephant. Out of these different colors, you see an elephant arising, a hologram of an elephant. We all know this, I think, these 3D pictures. So Vipashyana is now seeing, aha, this elephant is just an appearance coming out of these dots. The nature of this elephant actually is the dots, it's the colors. And it's just an appearance out of this color that is not really there. It appears to be real, but it's not really there. And with Vipashyana, we look exactly like this into the nature of our thoughts when they arise. For example, when you have a struggle with someone and you have this thought, he shouldn't have said that. I would do it like that, and I've been practicing Vipashyana like that. You take this particular thought, he shouldn't have been doing that. Repeat it, and then you look into it. What is this thought made of? I mean, it can bring up images, and then you look into this image. Is this really there? Is this image really there? What is it made of at the moment? And what is its form? What is its substance? What is this thought actually made of in my direct, immediate experience right now? And then you begin to see, aha, this thought is like the elephant in this book. It appears, but it has no solid reality. It has no solidity to it. It's not really there. It appears. And it's just made out of awareness, made out of my experience right now. It's just arising, as Carl mentioned, a phenomena as the basic knowing, appearing as the elephant, appearing as the thought, he shouldn't have said that, and disappearing again. And that's how I look into thoughts when I do Vipashyana. You really try to take the fact of the thought, how it is appearing right now, and look into it. What is it made of? Where does it arise? Like Carl also mentioned in the two-part formula, we had this first mode of selfless awareness where it doesn't need an I or a subject to hear, to feel. It's just selfless presence. And then we brought up the subjective sense of I. And then we had this appearance of what? I'm here. And we looked into that. What is it made of? Where does it stay? Has it a location? Has it a center? We just probed into it, not intellectually. We didn't go into the story of the I, where it was raised, or what was its mother, or what was its father, or where it will be heading in life. We just looked into the appearance of this I. And with thoughts, we can do the very same. You, like in the two-part formula, to bring up thought and look into it as it is arising. What is its immediate, instant nature or substance right this very moment? Yeah. I hope this was clear. Tina, if you have anything to add, please, or Carl.
Ugi, can I just ask a question? So one of the problems I have is that, so when people do bad things to me, I'm too quick to forgive them and to focus on what they did and to to excuse what they did and just focus on what they did to me and not how I feel about it. And the way I do that, the way I manage that is by getting like avoidance. I avoid the feeling. I avoid, you know, I avoid having the emotion about it that I should have. Like sometimes I'm right in my anger towards somebody, but I don't do it. I go straight to the I forgive you. You had a good reason for doing this mode. So can Vipassana help me with that? Or is it because I immediately go, you know, it's just my, like I'm, you know, I don't know, that all the reasons to let go of things, I use them too soon. You know what I mean? All the impermanence and, you know, like there's no self, all of this, I use it too quickly. So I don't experience it, and it's not good.
That's a very, very good point. And one of the dangers all the traditional texts talk about, that you actually use the insight of Vipassana intellectually to kind of dismantle your feelings, to kind of bypass what's actually going on in your mind right now. Vipassana, I think a way of looking at it is that it's an activity. It's not a knowledge. It's not like something, okay, this is it, now I know. It's a seeing. Vipassana is clear seeing. Vipassana is the readiness to look into your experience right now, how it is appearing, and stay with that. Stay exactly how it is right now. And you're talking about a pattern there, right? You think that you have, like, you forgive too quickly and you bypass your emotions. And in my experience, these patterns, these are a kind of narrative themselves that we tell ourselves. So something happens and then we do it, and then we kind of beat ourselves up. We say, oh no, I already did it again, and I was actually angry. And we're already planning, expecting it to happen again. We're already kind of swirling around in our head this pattern again. Like, oh, why am I like this? Why can't I do it differently? In this very moment, when you realize, when you have consciousness about, oh, I'm beating myself up, or I'm kind of thinking about it, use these times to do Vipassana. These very thoughts that are active in this moment. Like the thought, oh, I didn't do it again. I didn't do it again. How is it to experience that thought? And when this snapshot is made, in this very moment that the thought is active, it starts to crumble away. It starts to liberate itself. That is what Vipassana does. The thought and the story loses its power because it's seen for what it is. You take it out of the context of it's coming from the past and it's creating the future. You take it momentarily. You kind of pin it down, and then you see it for what it is. That's a story I'm telling myself. And what is it made of, this story right now? This is mental noise. And look deeper, and is this mental noise any different than the nature of mind? Is there any other substance in this thought than my own presence, my own immediate beingness? And you begin to kind of reconcile this thought into your wholeness, into your beingness of this very moment, and it loses its power. and you will not be fearful again of this thought, or it diminishes. The more you do it, the more you tackle down thought this way, you see it for what it is, the more it begins to seem less solid, the more it begins to be less of a problem, until it is just a very natural display of your presence, as are the noises around you, as are the colors that you see, and it begins to be completely a part of the natural clarity, which it already is, but you just, until this point, hold on to the impression that it's something different than the equipoise, something different than the mental calm, something different than the nirvana of the thoughtlessness. And so this is how you bridge thinking and no thinking. That's how you bridge all together into the natural clarity of mind.
I would also want to underline that, so you have been primarily talking about on the level of thought. So if these thoughts are coming up and they're a problem, there's usually an emotional quality or emotional, there's an underlying emotional thing there attached. So if your problem is that you block out these things and you're on the level of thought, kind of conceptually rationalizing it, and try to feel into the underlying current, like I can't find the word that I had it earlier that describes it better, but I think it still makes sense that there's this emotional aspect to that, and then go directly to that and open to it, like fully open to actually experiencing it. And over time, that will become easier as you actually become more sensitive to, that you are able to allow to open up more and more to experience them as they are. So as they appear, they have a self aspect to them. They have like a binding power, but digging deeper and deeper, as Uwe described with thoughts, they're just what's the word? They don't have that contracting power. They're just energetic manifestations. Does that cover the question?
And something I could add to that is that this thing has to be practiced. Thank you. That was what I wanted to add. You know, literally on one spot, sitting.
Yeah, it does not come. It's not, you can't just decide to sit down and open up to fully.
So, like the word insight is good because it means that you see inside into something. You see into something, and that's when you have an insight. But if you're not looking, you won't see. You won't have that insight. So we have to look.
Yeah, it's a really big part of the practice, isn't it? Because it's self-transformation through self-observation in the natural state, and it's really it's such a big prize in all of this, you know.
You also, one part of your question, you mentioned that will or is Vipashyana the way to go to deal with not well, not feeling these things. And with the practice, so when it gets going, and also when these shifts happen, how I experience this, that these filters, like these blockages of not expressing oneself, kind of naturally goes away, so that or progressively releases, so that one doesn't, so that naturally, without trying to change, without trying to, because I'm also in we have a good word for it in Norwegian, which is directly translated as conflict shy of conflicts, like avoiding conflicts. And with the practice, that just seems to naturally lessen, so that it doesn't, because it's not so dangerous, or the insight that it's actually not that dangerous to be in a conflict or potentially offend, all of that, it just naturally falls away. And that's a part of the liberation, that these things are actually allowed to play themselves out rather than being pushed pushed down.
Or to be conflict eager.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
If I may add something, Uji, thank you for the brilliant instructions there on how to dismantle or see through emotional upheavals, I guess they're called. I'm angry all the time. That's one of my discoveries from meditating. I'm really a lot of anger, and I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend now for approximately 5 years, and I want to highlight another component of that issue with being angry in or hurt or whatever in relations. I think at the level of relationships, it might be very valuable to express spontaneous the emotions you have, be they anger, hurt, sadness, whatever, and trust that the relationship handles it. Having some trust in the friendships and relationships one might have in their lives. Personally, I've tried way too much. When I get annoyed, just going straight into insight, trying to dismantle the seeming anger into lesser appearances, or doing the Ati thing, trying to combine the ever-present awareness with the anger. And it just, I don't know, it hasn't worked great for me, I can say. But I don't know, I haven't figured, I think it's a very hard balance, how to deal with tricky emotions that arises. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
I think it's important not to, Vipashyana doesn't mean controlling the emotional response. And in Hatha Yoga, we don't either try to control what comes up. So it's just about feeling into it and just about looking at it, not you said dismantling it into smaller pieces, and that can be taken as trying to make it not a problem anymore. So that's not what we're trying. We're not trying to make the emotion or thought into not a problem anymore. If it is a problem, we just look at the problem.
Yeah, it's exactly. I found that a little motivational attitude shift is very, very crucial in this moment. In this moment, it's when you catch yourself, I want to get this anger down, you kind of shift your motivational mode, your attitude. So what is this anger actually? So you kind of switch to curiosity. You switch your mode of where you come from. Like, I want to get this anger down. You notice that, you notice this tendency, and then you switch kind of, okay, let's forget about that for a moment. What is anger actually in this very moment? What is here at the moment? For me, it was very helpful to switch into curiosity. Like that started to grow with my practice, that I became more and more interested in my phenomenal world, more and more interested what is actually going on in my mind. And you can kind of, if you just consider it, that it's about developing more and more curiosity towards what is going on in your experience from moment to moment, you have this kind of natural attitude of not get sucked into the emotional drama too quickly. If you just kind of practice having this attitude of curiosity, or as Kim was mentioning before, courage. It's very close, courage and curiosity, because in this very moment when there is this emotional upheaval, or it's kind of prophesizing itself, it's a courageous thing to not do the things as you are used to do them. It's a courageous thing to break the spell in this moment, break the wheel that we just kind of put our energy in for lifetimes up until this very moment. And it's a courageous thing to make the cut there, to see, okay, what is really there right now? What is really there in this very moment? And this is a courageous thing, and it's something that we practice with all of this. It's this courage, it's this curiosity, it's this, what is going on? What the hell is actually going on? Not samsara in general as a philosophical concept, but what is samsara right in this very moment of my experience? What is here right now?
But it should be said here that it's usually, at least in the beginning, it's after the fact that you can study it. Like, and it's not like my experience is that you naturally enter this curious mode after a while, but there is no, like, so many, I had the impression before that you had to catch yourself in the act and then break it somehow. But that's not how I view it now. Even if you start studying the emotional stuff after the argument, after the explosion, then you do that. And then naturally it becomes the mode. Naturally, as it comes up, you can see it. So I wouldn't, just to underline again, that it's not like a forceful, we have to break, we have to change our how we express emotions in the moment. It will come. Does that make sense?
One thing that came up for me, or there were excellent points from you guys about Vipassana. One thing that was helpful for me, and I think it's helpful for many in sitting Vipassana practice, is to do some kind of subtle noting. Like when things come up, you just, with just a tiny fraction of your attention, you know that this is I'm judging, or this is anger, kind of putting small labels to what arises. And that might help, at least in the beginning of practicing Vipassana, it might help find patterns that you're in. Like you start noticing, I'm thinking about the future so often, or I'm going back to the past so often, when you put those small labels. And just after the label, it kind of, at least in my experience, you started to realize the emptiness quite quickly, that it's only empty thought in the end, or it's a feeling. But of course, in the middle of an argument or rage, it's really difficult. But in sitting practice, subtle noting might be beneficial to noticing the patterns and what kind of things come up, and well, basically that.
Yeah, for me, part of this self-transformation and the courage has been to be myself. And it doesn't mean agreeing with everyone all the time. It means having to say no to people where I wouldn't have said no before. And I suppose an elimination, or certainly a reduction in a build up of the stress or the tension where I wouldn't have actually been myself. I think it's leading to a greater awareness in me of the pain when I'm not myself. That it just triggers in me without creating a lot of pain, but it's an acute awareness that to be myself, and especially with dealing with someone, if I'm dealing with someone who has a very powerful personality, they may be bordering on the manipulative or on the bullying, where in the past I may have actually allowed them to really dictate my life for me. The courage to be Joe and say, I don't want to do that. And that brings a tremendous amount of peace itself. And I know this is part of the, I just mentioned about the prize there. And Kim, you mentioned earlier, you were talking about, and he's gone at this stage, I don't know whether he can hear me or not, about being oneself. That, you know, that this is what it's about. And yeah, that to me is the big prize. Big prize. Yeah, it doesn't always mean being that placid individual, you know, where someone says, oh, he's a meditator, or he's a Buddhist, or he's very accepting and all that. It's turning out to be probably the opposite from my point of view. And that can be difficult in relationships too, for the other person, to actually start accepting that, in fact, that Joe is being more assertive than he would normally have been.
And Liz, I just wanted to say, listening to you, trying to figure stuff out and kind of wondering and questioning a lot and asking questions about Vipassana and stuff. I've been there before as well, earlier in the practice, and where I got myself in a tangle a lot, trying to think about Vipassana and figure it out and make it this thing that I needed to kind of think about, and kind of in that way and like I kind of confused myself a lot about it, and I kind of complicated it for myself as well, and like trying to figure out life stuff and my patterns and all that stuff. Like there is times where there was for me where it was very frustrating when I was off the cushion and when I was in that kind of thinking mind, yet like, you know, kind of confused, a bit clouded or whatever. And you just have like using the natural state is like that's when the confusion isn't there. You won't be confused if you're in recognition of natural state, and like you won't really need to think about, like in recognition of natural state, you don't have to kind of think too hard or complicated. It happens much more simply and naturally, and that just becomes easier the more you practice. Like, so the more you're able to recognize the natural state, that will answer the questions for you, and the stuff will get resolved in those moments of recognition of natural state. And the more that you can have clear Hatha yoga, and like the more it stabilizes, all this stuff will just get answered and unravel, you know. So use the natural state, use the recognition of the natural state, and that will answer all this for you yourself, like through your own experience. And whatever comes to you, it's so much less problematic when you're in recognition of the natural state. It won't cause you confusion. It won't cause you any problems. So just trust that and keep practicing, keep going with it, and there'll come a time where you won't have to ask these questions and you won't have to figure it out conceptually. And it just starts to happen. So now, like, I still have difficult I still have the patterns going on, and I still have emotions and stuff. And 2 years ago, they would have really troubled me. I would have thought, oh, this is a problem. All these patterns are a serious problem. These emotions are a serious problem. But now they're not the same problem. They're still happening. But I don't have to do anything about them. And I don't have to like make an effort to work Vipassana with them or anything. It's just like they're there, you know, I don't know, just kind of, it changes. So there's way less of a thinking process about it. There's way less needing to figure it out. So just, I would say just keep practicing, keep trying to recognize the natural state as much as possible. And that will bring the clarity to your confusion and the tangle you're in. If you get in a tangle or frustration, it will work it out.
That's beautiful, Manus. Beautiful. But I came to think that I remember you vaguely. No, I remember you how it was the practice for you about 2 years ago. You said that, you know, you were
in a tangle there. Yeah.
So what happened there, and when did your how did it relate to your Bhumi openings, and which Bhumis? Do you remember?
I wouldn't be able to pinpoint it, but like, because I'm not sure. It just got clearer and clearer with Bhumi openings. Like, definitely it relates to Bhumi openings. So there's no doubt about that. And in the early Bhumis, you're still new to the practice. You're still very much in the old way of thinking about life and thinking that, you know, in the early years or in the early stages of practice, you think of your patterns and your emotions as a problem. And you're kind of, you know, no matter what comes up, we think that it's a problem that needs to be fixed, and we think that our whole life is a problem and the way we are is a problem. And even with the first few Bhumi openings, you still think like that. But then with more Bhumi openings like that, you kind of see that that's not necessarily true. Like that, you know, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but definitely the natural state becoming more stable. It means that stuff can come up, and it's not like one thing is more important than the other, or it's just all energy. It's all just stuff happening, and you can be still centered while it's happening. You can still be sort of okay and safe and secure and all, you know, and it pulls you aside less. It kind of confuses you less, tangles you less. So.
And without effort, without trying.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, when you're off the cushion asking the questions is very different to when you're on the cushion in recognition of natural state. So even though there is some value asking the questions about Vipassana off the cushion, or when you're, like, I did that too, but you're way better off sitting down and learning about Vipassana while you're, you know, properly sitting. So like, there's guided, like Carl said, there are guided sessions from Kim on YouTube, and it's way better to sit down, get into the clear frame of mind and recognition, and then get guidance on Vipassana, because that's when you're going to just absorb it and it'll happen much more naturally. But not to say that there isn't value of asking the questions like in these times off the question, like, but it will just happen better if you're actually sitting, you know. I think anyway. That's how it was. Like I've definitely had similar experience. So I'd say that's how it worked for me.
Thank you, man.
You're welcome. No problem.
Is Mia here?
No, I don't think so.
Because she had the other question. Oh, there she is. Please ask your question again.
Okay, hello. So, so basically, my question was that how, if you want to gain more courage to change your life, how would you go on about it?
Anyone feel like starting?
For me, courage was it's not something that you really can develop. It's something that courage is a part of the natural state. Courage is this natural openness. Like before we can resist something in our life, our natural state or our awareness actually has already allowed it. It's already open to it. Like a feeling of for example, sadness in us, and which we don't want to feel. And oh no, I don't try to go there. I don't want to go there right now because I'm afraid. The feeling is already there. The feeling is already held in the natural space, in the natural state. So courage is for me a remembering of that courage is already there. And then kind of open up to that. Which then takes a dynamics on its own in my whole life. Like I was kind of, or I've been, there's still some of that left, of course, some anxiety and not being courageous about addressing certain topics with people that I feel like, oh, I have a problem there, but I don't dare to speak with that person about it. But what I found out that it was more about not facing the stuff that was going on inside of me, the feelings that came up. And the more I opened up to the courage to look at the stuff that was going on in my mind, the feelings and the thoughts, and just take them into my awareness, look at them, be courageous to not try to do something else, to get distracted, not try to kind of intellectualize or move into certain directions to get away from that. I noticed that this opens up a natural courage that makes one much more free. The body feels freer, more open to new situations and stuff, just naturally. And I found that, for example, the pet practice that we do, it's a very courageous thing because we just basically cut out of the known into the unknown in this very moment. We cut through the samsaric layers of mind that we've been so used to and kind of let ourselves free falling for a moment. And we keep that free falling again and again and again. And this reveals what is there basically in us, not the stories about how shy we are or how turned down we are, but what is naturally in us, these basic qualities of our being. And so I found PET and the practice of Pamako extremely efficient in developing a more courageous lifestyle or a more courageous feel towards life. So far, so much from my experience.
Okay, thanks.
I'd say that. So for all samsaric beings, the two. So yes, courage is a part of basic nature. Is it loud enough?
Yeah, it's good.
So it is a part of basic nature, but of course, as samsaric beings, there's the relative nature of cultivating courage. And the way that I see it, it comes from, it comes together with the application of Vipashyana practice. So if the opposite of courage in the spiritual sense is to avoid, or not, to avoid looking at ourselves. And then courage would then be in the spiritual sense or increased courage is the courage to actually open up to the experiences that we have, to open up to look directly or feel directly what is going on. So in yesterday's, yesterday with the Mahasira family, there were Padampa Sangha and Machi Labdron. And Padampa Sangha, one of his most famous quotes is a teaching to Machi Labdron, which was his student. And one of those points was, go to the places that scare you. And the way I read that is not necessarily going only to external places like graveyards or whatever, but it's to go to those feelings, those patterns, habitual mind patterns that we have that actually are uncomfortable, to actually open up to them, to have the courage, or to cultivate the courage to increasingly face them directly, rather than avoiding with whatever coping mechanisms that we have learned. And so to illustrate, because yesterday I remember that you mentioned wrathful deities.
Yes.
Yeah. And just like, I already mentioned this on this retreat, but just like the faces or the forms, external forms of wrathful deities they're depicted as very scary looking, like some are crazy looking, black with fangs, with talons and so on. So they have this kind of scary look to them. And I mentioned that the way I see it, it's because these dark emotions, like if we dig into the dark aspects of our minds, the places that scare us, they also seem very scary at first. So there is this really we've had a long time to develop coping mechanisms and ways of avoiding to look directly at it. But when we take the stance of applying Buddhist practice, Buddhist Vipashyana, we start facing it, start opening up to it slowly. It's not like we can expect to have like a courage perfectly available to us from the start. But as we start to make that stance that we are going to look into ourselves, it develops more and more, so that we increasingly are able to open up to the really uncomfortable stuff in our own minds. So definitely on the relative level, there's an increase of courage in that sense, that we are able to face, for example, directing compassion to, it was mentioned also on this retreat that it's easy, like there's this, we can start by directing compassion or wishing well for people who we actually enjoy being with or whom we like. And in the beginning, it can be difficult to direct compassion to our worst enemy, or to people whom we have really deep, uncomfortable emotional baggage with. And it's the same here, that with the courage that comes, it becomes more and more, it becomes easier and easier to direct it and actually mean it. Also when it comes to dedicating merit, dedicating compassion, and looking into our own minds. And with these watershed moments, not necessarily booming openings, but for example, if there is some emotion that has bothered us, there is something that, like I've had the experience, for example, that there is something that I can't put my finger on, some nasty stuff in the background, and then in a meditation session, it has become more obvious, and actually I've been able to see it directly without that contraction, that artificial contraction that is put there by the selfing mechanism. And once we have those experiences, to see difficult emotions, or I actually don't like see, I like feeling better. Once we are actually able to feel and see how these emotions really are, as pure energy, as pure enlightened energy, once we've had those experiences a few times, it does become like we gain courage through that. Because if one really difficult emotion can be seen as without any contracting quality, without any selfing to it, then it means that all of the baggage can be seen this way.
Mm.
So courage comes through practicing Vipashyana, I think, in the spiritual sense of actually facing over and over. And we can't be too hard on ourselves and demand that we have more courage than we presently have.
Mm. Okay, thanks.
Because there is also what is called, what's the English word? Overconfidence.
Mm.
In Norwegian, that has the same root word as courage. So it's like over courage.
Mm.
And then we can burn ourselves. We just have to let it unfold.
Mm.
Like a warrior in war who is overconfident, has too much, like hubris in Greek,
Mm.
then they end up in problems. They can get killed.
Mm. Okay, I see. That's actually, I wasn't really thinking about that kind of courage. It was maybe more to find courage to live up to my ethical standards. It's in that kind of optic.
Well, I think that it comes through the same process. To live up to one's ethical. So again, as has been workshopped previously, the ethics, the origins of ethics are the natural state. So sincerity, all these moral values that have been mentioned here on this retreat as well, are a natural part, integral to the natural state. And what is covering it are these habitual patterns, samsaric patterns. So as we start deconstructing and breaking down this prison, so to speak, they become more available, and we are naturally able to live up to ethical standards.
Mm.
And now I'm speaking of because I'm speaking of those primordial ethical qualities, as opposed to, for example, like how to explain it, like you know, people can have ethical standards that they have that are completely intellectual and not necessarily ethical in the true sense of the word. So, but with Vipassana practice, with deconstructing that which is not authentic about ourselves and allowing the authentic expression to come out, we sort of naturally align with universal ethics.
Okay.
And I think with ethics, we also kind of have to go easy on ourselves and not demand too high ethical standards, if that makes sense. Like not to drop all ethical standards. Relative ethics are useful, but we can't demand that we are fully ethical beings from the start, just as with courage. Does that tie the two together or answer the?
Well, yeah, it does, yes. Thank you.
Let's take 5-6 minutes before break. Let's sit silently together. Thank you for the discussion. It was a really, really good discussion. Relax your eyes. And completely relax your body as if your body was the body of an unconscious person. Good. At one point of this retreat, I was talking about the compulsory habit of seeking and grasping. That's what I'm trying to help you to stop, those simple instructions. All right, ladies and gents. Yeah, thanks again for that wonderful discussion. It was a really, really good one. Let's take a break for hour and 10 minutes. So we'll continue at 7:10 EET. See you in hour and 10.
What are you holding?